We've all been there. It's the start of a new month, and you're now faced with the overwhelming task of updating your Excel files and reports. It's going to take hours, if not days, to complete, but it doesn't have to. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 Excel tricks you can use to automatically perform common tasks like including new items in drop-down lists, updating ranges for formulas, pivot tables and charts, as well as consolidating data and creating dynamic text labels so you can get your work done 10 times faster. Here I have my monthly budget versus actual spend report. By the way, you can download this template and see the step-by-step video from the link in the video description. Now, part of the process of updating this report is to classify my transactions into subcategories. And to ensure I'm consistent so that the data doesn't make a mess of the report, I have a drop-down list set up where I choose the categories. Now, you're bound to need new subcategories from time to time. For example, here I purchased a monthly travel card for public transport. But if we look at the list of subcategories, I don't really have a subcategory that's suitable. Now, this drop-down list references my categories table on the categories sheet, and you can see here's the subcategory column. So all I need to do is add a new subcategory here for public transport. And it'll have the same category and category type as taxis. So with that added, if I go back to my transactions table, click on my drop-down list, you can see public transport is now available, so I can select it, and that job is done. Okay, let's switch back to the example file, and I'll show you how to set up your data validation lists so that they automatically include new items. Here I've got a subset of my data where I need the new subcategory brought in for public transport. By the way, I brought in the category and category type fields here using XLOOKUP, so it looks a little different to my budget versus actual file we were just looking at. And these are looking up my category sheet where I've got my list of subcategories and how they map into the category and category type. The first step is to format the categories data in this table in an Excel table. And it's easy to do via the Insert tab, Table, or with the keyboard shortcut Control-T. Now my data is already in an Excel table, so we have the Table Design tab available on the ribbon. And if you look in the table name field, you can see I've renamed it TBL Categories. You can just type in there and give it a new name, which will make it easier to reference. Next, I need to define a name for my subcategories. So with them selected, on the Formulas tab of the ribbon, Define Name. I'm going to call it subcategories, and notice in the refers to, it's referencing the table and the subcategory column. I'll click OK, and then back on my transactions table, I can set up the data validation lists for my subcategory column. And we do that on the Data tab of the ribbon, Data Validation. Here I want a list, and in the source I'm going to reference the defined name I just set up for the subcategories. Now if you can't remember what you named it, press the F3 key, it brings up the list of names, select it, click OK, and then click OK again. And now if we click on the drop down, you can see I've got data validation that I can choose from. However, I haven't added the name for my public transport subcategory, so let's do that. And we'll copy down the category and category type. Now if I go back to my transactions table, control down arrow to the end, click on the drop down list, scroll to the bottom, there's my public transport subcategory. It automatically brings in the category and category type, and that job's done. Now the key to this working is to first format your categories in an Excel table, then define a name for the items you want in your drop down list, and then use that name in your data validation list source. And then any new subcategories you add to your categories table will automatically appear in your drop-down list without you having to lift a finger to edit anything. If part of your report update process involves new data in CSV, text, or Excel files like I have here in this folder, you can automate gathering the data into a single table that feeds your formulas, pivot tables, and charts with one click. I'll open one of the files so you can see the data. Now each file has the same structure, and that's because they're exported from another system, and that's going to allow me to append them to one another. Let me close it down, and then in my example file, I'm going to import the data from the Data tab of the ribbon. We're going to get data from File, and then from Folder. And this is Power Query. All I need to do is navigate to the folder containing my files and click Open. Now we don't see the files here, but you'll see them in a moment. Power Query's found the list of files. Now we can see these are Excel files, but they could just as easily be CSV or text files. And at the bottom, I can choose to combine and transform the data, combine and load it, or combine and load to, which allows me to choose where to load it to. I'm going to make some changes to the data, so I want combine and transform data. Here I need to specify where my data is, so it's on sheet 1, and we get a preview of it. I can click OK, and this is going to open the Power Query editor. You can see on the left the queries that Power Query's automatically written for me when it consolidated those files. I've got the data query selected, that's the last one, and that's the one I'm going to work with, so I'm going to collapse the queries pane. Now if we look in the source name column, you can see it's got the file names, and if I click on the drop down, it's got the 5 files. So I know that my 5 files of data are in this one table. Now I don't actually need the file name in my data set, so I'm going to press the delete key to delete that column. And then if we scroll across, you can see I've got order quantity and unit sale price, just holding down Control to select them both. But I don't have a column for my sale amount. Well, we can add a column, clicking on the Add Column tab. And then we're going to perform a standard multiplication of these 2 columns that I have selected. This adds a new column here. Let's double click the header to rename it Sale Amount and press Enter. And then I'm going to left click and drag and just pop it in beside my unit sale price. Let's click in the name for the query and we'll call this Sales Data. And if you look below in the Applied Steps pane, you can see Power Query has recorded all the steps I've taken to get to this point. So next month when I get new data, I don't have to repeat any of these tasks. Okay, now that I have my data from all the files in a single table, I can go to the Home tab, and under Close and Load, I want Close and Load To. And here I can choose to load the data to a table in my current file, or direct to a pivot table report, a pivot chart, or just create a connection. Now, if I load it to a pivot table report or pivot chart, this will be more efficient for Excel and keep your file size smaller than if you first load it to a table in the file and then build a pivot table, for example. However, if you need to reference the data in formulas, then you'll probably want to load it to a table in the file. So for this video, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to put it on an existing worksheet that I've got set up ready for it, and click OK. It opens the Queries and Connections pane on the right. I'm going to close that down. I don't need to work with it. And from here, I can easily summarize and analyze my data. And if we look at the order date column, you can see I've got data for January through May. And a bit later, we'll look at how easy it is to add June's data. But first, let's look at how we can leverage tables to automate other parts of our work. Now that our data is in a table, it comes with ready-made dynamic named ranges called structured references, which are made up of the table name and the column name. These structured references automatically expand and contract to include data added or removed from a table, meaning we never have to edit a cell reference in formulas, pivot tables, or charts again. For example, let's build a quick pivot table, and I'm going to pop it on an existing sheet that I've set up ready for it, and I'll click OK. Let's left click and drag the pivot table field list out so it's close to the pivot table. So here I want to see the ship mode in the columns, I want my order date in the rows, and let's look at the sale amount. All right, that's done. I'll close down the field list. I'll right click here and go into number formatting, and we'll just fix the numbers so they've got comma separators and no decimal places. Click OK. That's better. Now I can also visualize this in a chart, so let's insert a line chart and I'll bring it underneath. Let's just tidy this up. I'll remove all the fill buttons because they just take up a load of space, and let's put the legend at the top and we'll get rid of grid lines. All right, that'll do for now. And then to demonstrate the formulas, let's insert a formula that calculates the total sales. So we're going to sum. I'm going to go back and reference my consolidated data. So I want to sum the sale amount. Just going to left click in the column header, and it selects the sale amount column. close parentheses on sum, and press enter. That's that done. And let's also add one for the total units sold. And here, instead of referencing the table with the mouse, you can also just type in the name of the table. So there it is there, sales data, tab to select it, open square bracket for the list of columns, and I want the order quantity, tab to select it, close square brackets, close sum, and that's that done. Let's fix the formatting. We'll get rid of the decimal places and add comma separators. Now let's pretend that next month has rolled around and we need to update our reports. First, I'm just going to copy these values and paste them as values with Ctrl-Shift-V. Let's also format them so they're easy to compare. And then when we add the data, you should see these values increase. So here I am in the folder that contains my files. I'm going to Ctrl-V to paste in my June data file and then go back to Excel. Let's go to the query output, and on the data tab of the ribbon, I'm going to click Refresh All. Power Query goes away and updates the table. We can see June's data is now there. Let's go to the report, and you can see that my formulas have updated because the values have increased. However, my pivot table still only goes up to May, and that's because the pivot table did refresh, but it refreshed before the query had time to deposit the data into the query table. It's easy to fix, just click Refresh All again, and now my chart and pivot table include June's data. Now ideally, you would load the Power Query data direct to the pivot table or pivot chart instead of a table back when we closed and loaded the query. This way you'd only need to refresh all once for the pivot table and chart to include that new data. And of course, if you need multiple pivot tables and charts, then you could just copy this pivot table, paste it, and then edit it as required. And it would automatically refresh at the same time as you clicked Refresh All. Tables and their structured references are all good and well, but what if you can't use them for one reason or another? In that case, we can write dynamic named range formulas that automatically grow and contract with our data, just like structured references. Here I've got a pivot table that summarizes my expenses by subcategory with a slicer that allows me to filter what categories are displayed. Now I want to visualize this data in a tree map chart. So let's insert tree map. But notice we can't create tree map charts based off pivot table data, which is annoying, but not a showstopper. So I'll start by just copying the data, Ctrl-C to copy, Ctrl-Shift-V to paste as values, and then let's insert a tree map chart based on this data. Let's do a little bit of formatting. We'll get rid of the legend and we'll just skip the chart title for now. So I've got my tree map, but what I really want is for my chart to reference the pivot table so that I can use the slicers and have it dynamically update the chart. And this is where dynamic named ranges come in handy. Let's right click on the chart and go into Select Data, and we'll edit the legend entries. And you can see I need a dynamic named range for my series values. This is just referencing sum of net, so that's easy to change. And if we edit the category labels, you can see I also need a dynamic named range to reference the subcategories. So let's close that and we'll go and write those formulas that we need. I'll just write it here in this cell beside the pivot table, and we'll use offset. Offset returns a reference to a range of cells, so it can be used anywhere you need cell references, but it allows the reference to adapt, just like a structured reference. The first argument for offset is the starting reference cell. Well, that'll be my first cell in my subcategory list. I'm going to F4 to absolute that, comma. Then it wants to know how many rows from that reference you want to move up or down. I don't want to move at all, that's my starting point. Likewise for columns, how many do you want to move left or right? Well, I don't want to move left or right at all, so I'm going to skip that argument. Then it wants to know how high the range should be. Well, I can use count A to count how many subcategories I have. And I'm going to extend past the end of the pivot table in case I add more subcategories in the future. Let's F4 to absolute that, close count A, and then the width, well, it's just one column wide, so I can skip that argument as well. That's my offset. Now when I press enter, it's going to spill the list of subcategories, which is fine, but it's actually returning a reference to a range of cells. So with that done, I'm going to copy the formula And then on the Formulas tab, I'm going to define a name for that formula, and we'll call this Tree Map Axis. And in the refers to, I'm going to delete what's there and Control-V to paste in my offset formula. Click OK. That's done. Now I also need one for my values. So all I need to do is change the starting point from column C to column D. And now I've got my values. Let's copy that formula. We'll define another name. This will be my Tree Map Values. And in the refers to, I'm going to paste in the formula. Click OK. Now I don't need offset here anymore. Let's select the tree map and we'll go in and apply those names we've just defined. So select data. I'm going to edit my sum of net amount. So here it's currently referencing the data behind the tree map chart. This is just the series name, so we can just reference the cell in the pivot table. That's fine. And then in my series values, this is where I put in my dynamic named range. Now it needs to be prefixed by the sheet name, so I'm just going to delete the cell references and then F3 to bring up the list of names. This is my tree map series values, so I want tree map values. Click OK and OK. And then we'll edit the category labels. Again, I need to delete the cell reference part of the range and F3, and this is my tree map axis. Click OK and OK. So we can see the axis labels are still there. It's looking good. Click OK. And now you can see that my tree map is actually referencing the pivot table. So we don't need these text values here. Let's delete those. And then let's test if it works. I'll click on living expenses and my tree map updates. Let's select a few different categories. And you can see it's updating as my pivot table changes. And if I click on the chart, you can see the range only references the values that are displayed in the pivot table. Perfect. Before we dive into the next trick, I want to take a moment to commend you on making the time to learn some new skills. If you're finding these tips helpful and you want to dive deeper into mastering Excel, consider checking out my courses at myonlinetraininghub.com. These courses are designed to fast-track you to becoming an Excel pro, with in-depth tutorials and hands-on exercises, as well as support from me personally. They cover everything from the basics to advanced techniques. So whether you're looking to improve your data analysis skills, automate tasks, or create stunning dashboards, there's a course for you. The link to the list of courses is in the video description and pinned comment. Back in my accounting days, one of my monthly tasks was to analyze variances and write commentary to explain them. It was manual and laborious. I wish I'd known then that you can create dynamic text labels that automatically update. Let me show you how. Here I have a chart that tracks actual versus budget. And you can see I currently have actual data up to September, but it's difficult to see from the chart how the variance tracks year to date. We can see in the table the cumulative variance is 9K. Now I could use my chart title to add this context to the chart, but then I'd have to manually update it every month, and that would be a pain. Alternatively, I can write a formula that creates this title automatically and updates as I add new data to my table. Let's build the elements separately so it's easier for you to follow the different steps and challenges along the way, and then we'll bring it all together. So first, I need to locate the current month, and we can use index to index the list of months. And then index wants to know what row number I want returned. Well, we can use match to find the last value in the actual column. So the lookup value needs to be bigger than any of the values I'm going to have in this lookup column. So I can use the scientific notation for 10 billion, which is 1E10, comma, the lookup array are my actuals. And then in the match type, I want to find the value that's less than the lookup value. So that's 1. And that will return the last value in the column. Close match, close index, and press enter. So you can see it's returned a number, and that's because if I click in my month column, you can see it actually contains dates that have been formatted just to show the month name. So what it's returning is the date serial number for September. So what I need to do is format the value returned by index, and we can use the text function to do that. So the text function takes a value, that's my date serial number, comma, and then the format I want for that date serial number. Well, in this case, I want to return the whole month name, which is 4Ms. Close parentheses on text, and now we have September. Okay, that part's done. Next, I want to append some text to the month name, and that text is going to be variance to date, colon, and then a space. Close double quotes. So I've got September variance to date. Next, I need to find what that variance value is. So again, we can use index. Let's move that out the way. To index the cumulative variance, comma, and what row is that on? Well, we'll use match again to find a very big number that it can't find. Where is it finding it? In the actual column. And it's going to return the value less than the value it can't find. Close match, close index, and you can see it returns 9K. That's great, but it'd be nice if it formatted it with a $sign and a K. So again, we can wrap index in the text function, and the format is going to be the $sign and then hash, comma, hash, hash, 0, and then with a K. Now I also want a format for the negative value, so I'm going to put in the semicolon, and then I'll copy that, type in a minus, paste in the same format, close double quotes. So now it has the format for the positive and negative values. Close the text function, press enter, and there's my formatted number. So now I've got the two components of my dynamic title. Let's open up the clipboard. I'll clear it, and then I'm going to copy these two formulas. Control C to copy, adds it to the clipboard. And then let's go in and we'll copy this as well. I'm not going to copy the equal sign for this part. Copy. And then I'll delete them. I don't need them anymore. And then let's go and paste them in here. So I'm going to click to paste the first part of my formula. And then and click to paste the second part. Press enter. There's my dynamic title. All I need to do now is link it to my chart title. So with the outer edge of the chart title selected, click in the formula bar, equals, select the cell containing your label, and press enter. Now the chart title doesn't look any different, but let's enter a value for October. Let's say it's 25, press enter, and my dynamic title has updated perfectly. Now, of course, you could use this technique for different types of dynamic text, so consider using it next time you're preparing reports. Once you've mastered these 5 tricks and freed up some time, you'll be ready for even more Excel tips and tricks. In this video, I introduce you to some game-changing tools that most users tend to overlook. I'll see you there.